Good morning, class. So today, our lesson is Practice Occupational Health and Safety Procedure. We are now in week 2. So at the end of the lesson, you are expected to do the following. Identify hazard and risk, control hazard and risk, maintain occupational health and safety awareness. So before we start with our lesson, you have to answer the what I know in your module. You have to answer 1 to 10. So there is one correction. You have to add safe workplace on the choices below. You also have to answer the picture gallery. You have to identify all the pictures and write it on your answer sheet. Occupational Safety and Health, or OSH, is a cross-disciplinary area concerned with protecting the safety, health, and welfare of people engaged in work. Executive Order Number 307 was passed that governs the establishment of an Occupational Safety and Health Center in the Employees' Compensation Commission. In the next activity, what's new, you have to write your answers in a yellow pad or bond paper. You have to answer questions 1 to 3 and write your answers in a complete sentence. In question number 3, if you were about to create your own PPE, how will it look like? Please draw it and color it. Hazard and risk and its effects. So what is hazard? Hazard is a situation that poses a level of threat to life, health, property, or environment. Most hazards are dormant or potential with only theoretical risk of harm. Once a hazard becomes active, it can create an emergency situation. A hazardous situation that has come to pass is called an incident. Hazards are classified into 3 modes: dormant, armed, and active. Dormant, the situation has the potential to be hazardous, but no people, property, or environment is currently affected by this. Armed, people, property, or environment are in potential harm's way. Active, a harmful incident involving the hazard has occurred. Often, this is referred to not as an active hazard, but as an accident, emergency, incident, or disaster. There are different types of hazards. Number 1, biological hazard. It is one originating from an organism that is foreign to the organism being affected. Many biological hazards are associated with food, including certain viruses, parasites, fungi, bacteria, and plant and seafood toxins. In the picture below, an example of bacteria is called Salmonella, which is found in uncooked meat or contaminated water. The next picture is called fungi or mold. The causes of fungus in a house or other establishment is a direct result of excess moisture triggered by cold, dark, and damp conditions. The next picture is parasites. Parasites are a living thing that lives in or on another living thing and gets food and sometimes shelter from it and usually causes harm to it. The next one is virus. Virus is an infectious agent of small size and simple composition that can multiply only in living cells of animals, plants, or bacteria. Another type of hazard is chemical hazard. It is caused by exposure to dangerous substances or chemicals that can affect the health of the worker. Solid, liquid, vapor, or gaseous substances, dust, fume, or mist are examples of chemical hazard. Another hazard is called mechanical hazard. It is any hazard involving a machine or process. Motor vehicles, aircraft, and airbags pose mechanical hazards. Compressed gases or liquids can also be considered a mechanical hazard. These gases are usually inside a container. The picture below is an example of a liquid nitrogen being poured in a container. Another type of hazard is physical hazard. It is a naturally occurring process that has the potential to create loss or damage. Physical hazards include but not limited to earthquakes, floods, and tornadoes. Physical hazards often have both human and natural elements. For example, flood problems caused by climate fluctuations and by land drainage. Another are X-rays, overexposure can lead to cancer, skin burns, and tissue damage. Another example of physical hazard is slips and falls or ang aksidenteng pagkadulas. The last type of hazard is called ergonomic hazard. It is a physical factor within the environment that harms the musculoskeletal system or the muscles and the skeleton. It involves uncomfortable workstation, height, and poor body positioning. Ergonomic hazards are caused by poorly designed workplaces or processes. Examples are lifting heavy objects with a wrong posture. Next is working in the office and sitting poorly, which may lead to backaches and neck aches. Next is working in a construction site. The person using the drill may have a complication in hearing because of the excess vibration and loud noises produced by the machine. Next is reaching objects in high places with a wrong procedure. Last is working or studying without proper lighting may result to strain in your eyes and may cause headache. Now let's proceed to hazard versus risk. Hazard and risk are often used interchangeably. As defined a while ago, a hazard is any biological, chemical, mechanical, or physical agent that is reasonably to cause harm and damage to humans or the environment with sufficient exposure or dose. While risk is defined as the probability that exposure to a hazard will lead to a negative consequence, or more simply, risk is equals to hazard times dose or exposure. There are different safety regulations implemented in the Philippines. Number 1, the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999. Number 2, the Waste Management. Number 3, the Disaster Preparedness and Management. So number 1, the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999. In 1999, the Congress enacted Republic Act No. 8749, otherwise known as the Philippine Clean Air Act. It is the constitutional law designed to make sure that all Filipinos have air that is safe to breathe. Public health protection is the primary goal, though the law also seeks to protect our environment from damage caused by air pollution. The Clean Air Act is guided by the following principles. Letter A. Protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. Letter B. Promote and protect the global environment while organizing the primary responsibility of local government units to deal with environmental problems. Letter C. Recognize that the responsibility of cleaning the habitat and environment is primarily area-based. And letter D, recognize that a clean and healthy environment is for the good of all and should therefore be the concern of all. The next safety regulation is the waste management. It is the collection, transport, processing, recycling, or disposal of waste materials. Waste management program helps manage hazardous, chemical, radioactive, medical, and other waste safely and legally. There are different types of waste. Number 1, solid waste is defined as any waste that is dry, in form, and is discarded as unwanted. Examples are plastics, styrofoam containers, bottles, cans, papers, scrap iron, and other trashes. Next is liquid waste. It includes human waste, runoff or stormwater or floodwater, sewage, industrial water, wastewater, and other forms of wastewater from different sources. Examples are chemicals, oils, wastewater from ponds. Classification of waste according to their effects on human health and the environment. Letter A. Hazardous waste. are unsafe substances used commercially, industrially, agriculturally, or economically. Examples are paint, motor oil, pesticide, drain opener, prescription drugs, air fresheners, and batteries. Next is non-hazardous waste, are safe substances used commercially, industrially, agriculturally, or economically. Examples are papers, cardboards, linings, wrappings, paper packaging materials, or absorbents. Usually, the non-hazardous wastes are recyclable. The process flow of waste management. The process flow refers to the 3 or 4 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover, which classify waste management strategies according to their desirability. The R's are meant to be a hierarchy, which means nauuna yung pinaka-importante sa pinaka-hindi importante. It is in order of importance. The waste hierarchy has 5 steps: reduce, reuse, recycle, recovery, and disposal. In reduce, lowering the amount of waste produced. Reuse, using materials repeatedly. Recycle, using materials to make new products. Recovery, recovering energy from waste. And disposal, safe disposal of waste to landfill. In disposal, it is the least favored option. And the last in safety regulations is the disaster preparedness and management. It aims to reduce or avoid the potential losses from hazards, assure prompt and appropriate assistance to victims of disaster, and achieve rapid and effective recovery. In disaster management cycle, there are 4 types: the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. In mitigation, it is minimizing the effects of disaster. Examples: building codes and zoning, vulnerability analysis, public education. Preparedness, planning how to respond. Examples: preparedness plans, emergency exercises or training, and warning systems. Response, efforts to minimize the hazards created by a disaster. Examples: search and rescue, emergency relief. In recovery, returning the community to normal. Examples: temporary housing, grants, or medical care. Contingency measures and procedures. Contingency plan is a written emergency procedure plan which describes what actions must be taken to minimize hazards from fires, explosions, or unplanned releases of hazardous waste or hazardous waste constituents to air, soil, or water. What must a contingency plan include? A description of the emergency procedures to be followed by facility personnel in response to fires, explosions, or any unplanned sudden or non-sudden release of hazardous waste or hazardous waste constituents to the air, soil, or water. A description of arrangements agreed to by local police departments, fire departments, hospitals, contractors, and state and local emergency response teams. An up-to-date list of names, addresses, and phone numbers of all persons qualified to act as emergency coordinator. An up-to-date list of all emergency equipment at the facility, including the location and physical description of each item, along with a brief outline of its capabilities. An evacuation plan for facility personnel.